Good morning and good afternoon to everyone who is with us today. My name is Pelin Akbaş and I'm the marketing manager at BSI, and I'm going to facilitate the BIM Talk today for you. If you're a regular BSI online events attendee, you may have noticed that we have a different concept today, and we are live streaming from the Red Sea Development Company's headquarters from Riyadh. Soon, I'm going to leave the stage to our valued speakers, but before we start, I would like to set out some ground rules for you. You're all signed into this BIM Talk in listen-only mode, but during the session, please feel free to type your questions in the question box on the webinar control panel. We will collect all of your questions and the answers will be provided after the session is over. This BIM Talk is being recorded and each of you will receive the recording shortly after the session. Today, we are hosting our valued guest, David Glennon, who is Senior Digital Delivery Director at the Red Sea Development Company, and my esteemed colleague, Rahul Shah, who is the Built Environment Sector Development Director at BSI, is going to moderate this interactive discussion. I'm sure many of you already know David. Still, I'd like to briefly mention about him before we start. David has more than 25 years of experience in the construction industry. He oversees the use of pioneering technology to improve the design and construction process, introducing automation and data-driven insights to deliver fast-track construction, design for manufacture, and assembly to enhance customer experience. He has solid experience in creating and implementing digital strategy in several positions across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and India. And Rahul, for over 23 years, has held leadership roles responsible for digital transformation and innovation strategy and implementation, including a diverse range of projects like large-scale multi-billion-pound urban regeneration schemes. He has gained a thorough understanding of the risks and opportunities faced by today's global construction business while going through digitalization. His current role involves supporting clients in digital trust, innovation, BIM, digital twins, smart cities, IoT, and information security and resilience. Thank you again for joining, and now it's over to David and Rahul.
Thank you, Pauline. Thanks for the introductions, and welcome to everyone on the BSI BIM Talks. David, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we are in Red Sea headquarters in Riyadh, in Digital City today.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, you know, and some of the things that I've seen, you know, the Red Sea project is driving, you know, the ultra luxury regeneration project. And I'm sure it will be an interesting conversation as we dive into that. But what I'm really curious to hear first from you is, tell us a little bit about your own personal journey into BIM, David. You know, Pauline mentioned 25 years worth of experience in the construction industry. So
okay.
Take us through the journey, please.
Okay, so well, I'll start at the beginnings. So I've always been around construction. My father was in construction, heavily into groundworks, so I was sort of brought up around it. You know, the dream was to drive a machine, I think. But went to university, studied construction management, as up in Salford, and as part of that, you got attached to a company. For me, that was Bovis Construction. And I think probably that's what gave me such a good grounding then for further work in all the different roles that I've had, because as a trainee construction manager, you had to quickly learn about contracts and scopes and budgets and what's an instruction and how to deal with change management, and you know, which is the life and soul of a construction project. You really do have to know the basics, I believe, in order to really add some value. I suppose luckily for me here now is a lot of our work was through a construction management form of contract, so you had to get very hands-on with it, and we're following a similar form here. So spent 15 years, no, just under 15 years with Bovis, and did a number of roles, as I said, as construction manager for a number of years. I then got an opportunity to work in the office. I think I was getting frustrated. I could see a lot of inefficiency on site. I wanted to find a different way to do things, so joined the continuous improvement and knowledge management team. So that was pretty exciting. I think I was probably about 22 years old. got to go travel the country, understand what was going on so many different construction sites, understand the lessons learned, and then that turned into a global opportunity where I was working with similar people across the world. And I think the bit that I enjoyed about that was, well, learning about how construction looks everywhere, but then also I was asking people to operate in a different way. So I was asking, people with 30 years experience to put their hands up and ask a question of their peers, and that was like pretty challenging, because knowledge is power. So that's where I started to learn a bit about change management, organizational change management, got a bit involved with health and safety. I then happened to bump into technology. There was one of my friends was running an IT project in the IT team, and he needed a project manager, and I didn't have a site to go to. So I thought, well, project management is project management. It doesn't matter whether it's bricks and mortar or bits and bytes. You're still managing people and budgets and change. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I managed to get back into the construction side with that. So I was running transformation programs, often around technology. So it was often around collaboration platforms. So working closely with our project partners, our consultants, and our subcontractors to get them together to work in a in a digital way. So I suppose that's really where it started. So spent a number of years doing that. I had great fun, had a great team. We were working I got to work on projects all over the world. And sort of came to an end with construction. I wanted to see how it worked on the consultant side. So worked with Mott MacDonald and URS that turned into ACOM, and then Arcadis. And it was a sort of mixture of roles. Some of it was the internal transformation piece, which is I always find that fun, but it was always had the edge, or pretty much all roles had the edge of providing consultancy externally. So I was working with clients, again, internationally, helping them with their information management. So whether that was helping them with a sort of set up the digital strategy, or whether it was implementing a common data environment, or just trying to find the business case to go do something different. It was good then to go out externally, test your ideas, bring that back internally, then to do the transformation and continuously check that in the industry. And then more recently, that was broadened from just looking at platforms to more around innovation, creating ecosystems, and trying to help an organisation, rapidly change their business model. So I had a number of years doing that, and then was looking for a change. Me and my family were looking for an adventure. We looked at a few different adventures. Me and a friend almost bought a vineyard at one stage. We were moving to various countries. And then luckily, the opportunity with the Red Sea came up, and the idea of sort of coming with my family to Saudi Arabia, that certainly ticked the adventure box. And we're here having a great time, really enjoying it. People are really nice. The work is really good, and I think that's probably what sort of drove the move. When I found out what the role was, and I found out about what the project was, and I'll probably talk a bit more about the project in a moment, sort of selfishly, I didn't want anyone else to have the opportunity, so we jumped at it, and I've been here 3.5 years, and it's been good. So I wouldn't say I chose BIM. I think I happened to be in change in the AEC industry. A lot of that more recently, in the last decade or so, has been driven around technology, and that the technology has changed, and BIM has been for a decade, especially in Europe, been the thing. But I think we're progressing from that now. It's not just about BIM; it's about how we're actually going to make a difference to the industry, and a difference to the the end consumer of the assets that we create.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you so much for sharing that journey. Wow, started with love for machines, all the way through to wow, the knowledge management, change management.
But I still get excited about that now. So that's Southern Dunes, and I get to see the machines out there, and I love watching it. I'll take pictures and send them home to my dad. That's good.
And it's also good to see that how starting with some people start with design consultancy, and then construction, and then it's great to see you started the reality, that what's real on the ground, right? Construction, and then a bit of consultancy, but then here you are, driving the most ambitious, the sustainable project, Red Sea from digital and BIM point of view, right? So developers point of view and perspective. Such a fascinating story. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, you mentioned your love for Red Sea and the dunes and all those things. So tell us a little bit about what's this project about, like some key highlights. What attracted you to this project? You mentioned that you were looking for adventure. And completely agree with you. You can't get any better than this, right? The Red Sea, the love for data, digital construction, and adventure all in one place. Tell us a little bit about the project, David.
Okay, so well, I'll tell you what, if you go to our social media channels, the Red Sea, that's got this continuously updated with everything that's going on, and there is so much going on. That's where often I get a lot of my information from. But so we've got the Red Sea Development Company. It's part of PIF. We're one of the 3 giga projects. Our focus is very much on sustainable tourism. So we're opening up the coast to invite people to come and experience just like how amazing it is. I think one of the unique things about the area is just how stunning it is, and I'm lucky I get to go there regularly for work, and it's the landscape's amazing. There's some great there's lots of wildlife, lots of endangered species. We were on holiday there, I think it was end of last year with my family, and actually got to go and experience it outside of work, and it was just great to go out snorkeling, to go see what was there under the water, and spend time going inland as well to go see the mountains and the volcanoes. It's absolutely stunning. But I think that's probably where the challenge is then. So we've got a number of assets to develop, including an airport, a number opening early next year, super luxurious hotels, and we've got to create that in an area where there's sort of little infrastructure. We've got to go create that, but without destroying that environment that's there, because if we destroy that, we end up sort of destroying all the product. We destroy the beauty of it. So that's really what the challenge was. And when that was explained to me, and the timescale for it to be delivered, it was it was just too enticing to say no to. And then on top of that, more recently, the last couple of years, we've now got the Amala project as well. So it's somewhat similar, is differentiated very much on wellness, and that's now starting to really pick up in construction as well. So there's just lots of opportunity to to go do some good digital work. I think that's where it's interesting. There's so many. I guess I'm privileged because I've got a view of the world, but I sort of struggle to see how we could create these assets in that location in this time with in an environmental way, with it using traditional methods. I think we have to do something different in order to create that. And if you look at our strategy of creating something new, a pioneering way of doing things, and that includes data and technology, it was it's absolutely aligned to the things that I enjoy.
Fantastic. And correct me here, if I get my stats wrong, but Red Sea is almost 28,000 square kilometer, right? Extends spans across that. I mean, such a massive, site logistics point. As you rightly said, there is no infrastructure to support the site logistics, right? Enabling the site construction. And so embarking on that bold vision of, the world's most, ultra luxury sort of, sustainable development.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that technology, the roll-up. So help me understand a little bit about how does BIM / information management fit within this ambitious vision?
Okay, all right. So so I suppose I'll just get back a bit. So you're right there about the size of the site, and often creative factors is the size of Belgium. But then I suppose what that allows you to do then is to take out sort of wider view of it. So interestingly, what the environmental team very early on was to understand what is in that area, and understand all the different types of flora and fauna and the wildlife that was there. So we could then sort of understand what's there, and then, since we've been there, understand what the impact of that is. So there's an immediate example of where digital has been part of it, and that's they've been using some super clever techniques, working with some of the scientific community here, and I believe worldwide as well. But that also then feeds into GIS from my perspective. So I look after the 2 main platforms would be GIS and BIM. And I think when you work at that scale, then all of a sudden GIS becomes super important. And if you look at a lot of organizations internationally, it's sort of trying to understand where some of these technologies can fit together. Whereas I think we've got a really, it's a fairly unique opportunity to align these. And we've started to do that through our classification, using the correct standards. Luckily, I look after both teams, so they're forced to work together. Right? So they've got a collaboration there. So it allows us to start to see some of the benefits that typically a lot of projects don't get the chance to do. But specifically, it was about the BIM information management journey. So if you look, we started. Well, I've been here 3.5 years, and so obviously the project started before that. But certainly when I joined, the company was still, quite young. So I think I was employed 250, and already we were going out to the market to find, consultants and contractors to work with us. So the requirements were sort of evolving as I joined. So my information requirements then were also evolving. So that then, sort of gives you an opportunity to, we sort of had to find a way to create that flexibility for the supply chain to react, but then to hit our requirements, but at the same time keep it focused enough so that the supply chain knew what we were asking for. So there's a couple of things that we did very quickly. So the first one was aligning to an international standard. So we used ISO 19650. What that then did is it created a common language then, even though it was still, not hugely understood compared to now. At least there was a reference point that everyone could then reach back to understand what it was that we were asking for. And then on top of that, we implemented our common data environment, and then the common data environment baked in a lot of the ISO 19650 thinking. So if people wanted to work with us, it just started to drive them down the path of doing that. So I think early doors, that was the big win for us. That then allowed us to get that platform in place and then accelerate.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And you mentioned, I think it was very important for Red Sea to be flexible so that you can take supply chain on the journey. It was very important for you looking at the, such an ambitious program as well in terms of completion and construction and what have you, and be focused right there as well. So but how important?
I was going to say, but I think that was the important bit, because once we've got that platform piece in place, that bit of consistency, we're also then introducing lots of other things. So like lean design and the way we do big reviews. So we're introducing things that you're not seeing elsewhere, but it's all based on that foundation of the standards, and then the technology underpins it. Sorry, Rahul.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I guess what I'm hearing is that that important, and you mentioned that common language, common framework. So it was hugely important to establish that the base layer, right, the foundation upon which you can then have your CDE layer, your lean thinking, your lean designs, constructions, and what have you plug into it, right? But having that common framework, and you chose to adopt that ISO 19650 based approach, and you mentioned that that's what your starting point was, right?
Yeah. So and then I think the other exciting challenge with that then is we had a number of consultants that we were working with, international consultants, so they were well versed with that way of working. So straight away we were able to get some traction and start to deliver. And then I guess within sort of 6-9 months of us starting to get that traction, we had the pandemic, so people work in a distributed manner, and we had that common language, which then allowed people to continue to work and to collaborate, even if they were at home, that they could still work in that way. And so that was important for the organisations that were already established. But I think the bit that so I'm probably more proud of is if you look at the impact that we've had then on the ones that aren't that established. So if you look at some of the smaller contractors that we're working with, they've had to sort of for them it wasn't a common language. They had to learn that language, learn that way of working, which we help with, obviously. And I think we understand that it takes a little bit of time, so we're working with people for a month or two just to get them up to speed, but then they're working the same way as everyone else. That's something they can then take onto other projects as well, which helps us ultimately, because we're starting to make a shift in the market where people are working in that way. And then even then we're starting to work with some say, some of the offsite manufacturing organisations. So I think one of the things that digital has helped has been that shift from in situ working to prefabrication, and we're working with some you know, I'm sure you've seen some of the pictures of the orbs and the wooden structures that, you know, they're fantastic. The idea of, for me, the idea of trying to do that in an uncontrolled environment is, you know, it's unthinkable. I believe you could only really do that in a factory environment. But what it's also now is to work directly with the manufacturers. So we're able to get you know, models from Foster's and from other consultants, and build them in and then transform them ready for our manufacturers. So they were able to accept those and straight away put them into their machines to start construction straight away. So you're just stripping out huge amounts of waste within the process, but then also get the feedback from the manufacturer to say, well, that if we can change the design slightly, then this all of a sudden makes it much more efficient.
Right. And are you saying that then that sort of makes that whole design feedback loop more efficient as well? Absolutely. You know, approaching this common language, digital way of working.
Yeah. So that's one example. But I think and we're not there yet. But I think as our sort of like data play matures, once we start getting customers in, we start to get feedback on how these assets are performing, because we've got that consistent way of working, that consistent sets of data, we can then loop back that feedback into future designs. And that's something that, you know, it's a lot of people talk about. It's not always easy to achieve that, but we've got an opportunity on these projects to do that.
Fantastic. You mentioned we are not there yet, right?
Yep.
And with Red Sea being such a bold and gigantic project, right? You already touched upon some of the challenges from supply chain point of view and others. I'm really curious. Help me understand this. I'm really curious because I can't get my head around this. You know, 28,000 square kilometer. You know, the scope of project. You know, traditionally, you know, and the stories I hear around the world as I talk to some clients, you know, that when there is a client BIM mandate, then we do it. When there is a government BIM mandate, we do it. Come to this project, you are the client. You are setting those ambitious goals, and there is no government mandate in Saudi to do BIM or heavy, and as we see in other economies. So you must have faced some challenges in terms of, you know, rolling out BIM, right? The thinking in supply chain. So tell us a little bit more about some of the key challenges. And you mentioned you're not yet there as well, right? Where you want to be. So tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Okay, all right. So well, I suppose I'll start with then some of the things that helps overcome the challenges. So I'm, you know, very lucky, and I think the organisation is very lucky. At the leadership, there is that understanding of new ways of working, digital ways of working, technology are enablers to help us go and achieve what it is that we need to achieve. So very lucky, had support from the very top. It would have been very easy to decided to go down a traditional route because people feel that there's less risk in it. They feel like they're in control, but and you know that battle's always there, and you know like every day still that's still there. So you expect to be challenged, but we've had that drive from the very top that this is the way that we're working, and on the whole, it's been like really well received in the supply chain. So so that's good. But I suppose sort of going back to what I was saying earlier about where I got to learn about contracts and budgets and instructions and change management, change orders. I think that pragmatic, you know, approach to deliveries is important as well. And what it's allowed us to do with the digital strategy is then to align that to what we're trying to do from an organisation perspective. So. Trying to be pioneers, ensuring that we don't, you know, impact the environment, that we make a difference in the local market, that we're training some of the Saudi nationals as well to pick up these ways of working and build like a bit of a digital legacy as well. So we're able to create the strategy in a way to that aligns to exactly that. So so you've automatically got a few levers then to then push against some of the challenges. So the big one that you spoke about there was the supply chain, and this isn't just specific to here. It's the same around the world. It's trying to help the supply chain get to be performing where you need them to perform. It's probably been slightly exacerbated here because that wasn't a big BIM presence, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So that there wasn't that latent capacity or capability within the market. So we know that we've had that was always going to be a challenge. So what that's meant is my team spend a lot of time with consultants and contractors, helping them get up to speed, helping them make sure that they understand what the real requirements are, and at times we'll step in and perform some of the tasks and roles in order to keep the project moving. But we do that in a way where that the contractor can then pick it up. Yeah. So we'll sort of show them how the first couple of times, and then so looking to expand that and looking at things like an academy and trying to do things like that. But yeah, that's all about hitting, scaling some of those ideas up. I suppose the other challenge that we've had has been access to some of the latest technology. So from a data hosting perspective, here it's the regulations that the data should be hosted within the kingdom, especially confidential data or classified data. And the real impact for that for us is, as you know, a lot of the new technologies that they're all cloud-based. Yeah. So it becomes very hard to bring some of those technologies here to use, even though you know that they'd automate things that make a difference. But it either means that we can't use them, or the cost to bring them here then increases so much that it just makes it a lot harder to do. So that building capacity and capability is a big challenge, and then it's just the sort of like cybersecurity has been challenging, but both of which you can get round if your strategy is correct and your leadership believe in it as well.
Yeah, amazing. Great to hear that. Not only the strategy, so you got definitely, it looks, it's working. So you got the strategy right. But I think the most important point I'm taking from this conversation, just last few minutes is, how amazing to hear the story that how you take supply chain on the journey. Again, it reinforces your initial point about being flexible, yep, but being focused, yep, and helping the local. And I want to, it's a great thing you mentioned, in your last response, that enabling and empowering Saudi nationals. Yep. How important is that for Red Sea?
Yeah, it's it's just like it's huge. It's one of the reasons why we're here. It sort of sits within our KPIs as well. But I guess for me personally, it was always going to be super important, and I suppose what we're doing is not unique. With certainly I've done this other places around the world, and it's got to be your driver to ensure that you don't have a job in a few years, because that's the point of view trying to do this. And I've been really lucky. So of course you've met Mohammed Alderwood. Yeah. He was the project manager for us to get the ISO 19650 kite mark. He did an amazing job there. But he joined us. He was my first BIM manager. He'd never worked in the AEC industry before. He came from petrochem, so there's definitely some synergies there. Yeah. But he's just got an encyclopedic knowledge of standards, ways of working. If someone's done something around the world, he'll have read the paper on it, and he knows all about data classifications. They can tell me all about Kobe, and he knew all the people that I knew in the industry, even though he's never met them, but he can tell you who wrote what bit and what was important. So when he joined, he didn't have the construction experience, but I would have been lost without him, especially during the CVE setup. If he wasn't there, just reminds us, well, no, this is the good practice, this is best practice. If you look at him now, he's running projects. He's running projects well. He's my go-to man if we need to do anything around structured data. So he's got a fantastic trajectory in front of him. And we're now supplementing that. We've got a number of younger Saudi nationals coming in. They're coming out of university. From talking to, I was chatting to one of them a couple of weeks ago. She was worried that she didn't have a place in the industry with the skills that she had. So she's really excited about coming here, because then she can get to do the information management part. So she understands some of the modelling, but that's not the bit she was interested in. She wanted to be part of the information management piece. So she's now got that opportunity. We've got another one in, and then sort of the same then with some of the contractors, the local contractors that we're dealing with. So a lot of the the young local talent in there are getting excited because they're getting to work in our projects, doing what they do in the organisations that they already fit in. So I know it's all anecdotal, but it's real. You know, we're starting to see a change. I'm sure that's just going to build momentum on all the projects that are here.
It's amazing, and I'm glad that you mentioned Mohammed, David, in this conversation. I couldn't agree more with you. Such a great example of how somebody coming in from oil and gas petrochem industry, no knowledge in AC, but driving that ISO 19650 alignment on such a gigantic project. It's a a great achievement for him personally, but also for you as a leader. How you're empowering. It's the real evidence of how you are empowering local citizens, in these new skill sets, right? And the investments that Red Sea is making in that, empowering local citizens. Great story.
We need more of this, and as everyone here knows, I'm always there's always adverts out there, always trying to hire new talent. That's probably one of the biggest challenges, is trying to get super talented people here. It's just high demand.
But I think the approach you are taking is really unique there, because a lot of the time people think that, oh, let's just import the talent in, whereas what you just did there in the last 3.5 years, what you described, is focusing on local talent, taking them on the journey, not only supply chain but your own talent pool, right, and creating that. That's such a powerful and
much more sustainable. So
sustainable as well, and it fits really well in that Saudi's 2030 vision as well, right? Creating the digital economy, enabling the citizens. Brilliant to hear that. So how do you see then, David, where you are now, 3.5 years into the journey, BIM implemented, and I guess a couple of projects or destinations will be open in Q1 next year. How do you see BIM going from here to into the future? Take us into the future, into 3 to 5 years, a journey from now to 3 to 5 years journey from BIM perspective, David.
Okay, so I'll tell you a bit about how we got to where we are, and then that'll explain the next 3 to 5 years. So our sort of digital maturity plan or strategy was step one was around building the platform. So being very project centric, we had to get these projects up and running efficiently and start to see wins straight away. And that's what as we described before, with the standards and the right technologies and getting people trained up. So that was good. Then we moved on to a more sort of data-centric view. So at least now we're collecting data and we're starting to make things more efficient, but let's make sure that we've got high quality data. And we're sort of learning now what the balance is. So we may well have collected too much data early on because we didn't quite know what the requirements were. Now we're starting to understand that. We're sort of rationalizing all the different types of data that we're collecting, but it's high quality, and that then enables other things. So good example, we spoke with Dr. Oldmeadow from our environmental and sustainability team. We've now got a sensible data to work with him with. So he's now asking tough questions that we're able to answer, or at least sort of give some sort of insight as to what's going on. We're only able to do that because we've got good data. Starting to see now with some of our handover work that we're doing with some of the for some of the assets, and even just internally with some asset management and facilities management piece. So we've sort of got the feeling that we're starting to get the data right, and that then moves on to the more customer experience piece. So where we've just completed a proof of concept for our digital twin, and that will then become the cornerstone for the smart services. What I believe will become a cornerstone. I'm sure they've got lots of cornerstones for the smart destination strategy, but I think that digital twin will then help enable a lot of those things. So as you see, we've got the platforms in place. We're now getting comfortable with what the data looks like and the quality of the data, especially in the GIS space. So data quality is high there, and what that's allowing us to do is, as well as all the sort of standard sort of GIS work that we're doing, it's now being used in the field a lot. So a lot of our environmental teams, a lot of our contractors are out doing surveys, environmental surveys, and that's immediately coming back into our GIS platform, so that we can then start to make decisions on it. And our construction teams are getting great value from it. And I know they were at the Imala project, I think it was last week, and people in the fields, bearing in mind that there's nothing there, they could see where they were on the master plan, what the ground looked like. And it was, I know that they seem like small examples, but they're super powerful when you're out in the field. So I mean, that's been a fantastic win for us. So yeah, so we've got the data right. We're now starting to look at a customer experience piece. So the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to ensure that we've got the right data in place. We're going to continue to align with the smart destination strategy. There's new technology coming all the time, and I believe it's all pragmatic uses of digital techniques. So we've got visual production management, so we can start to automatically capture progress on site. That can then link with our schedules. That can then link with our BIM models, so we can see what is there now, what should be there now. And that will help us in the future. We've got some advanced visualization work going on just to make it easier for people to understand what's going on from a 3D perspective. So there's an AR pilot going on as well. So there's lots of new technologies, but I'll be honest with you, that's not the bit that I'm getting too excited about. It's the challenge for us now is going to continue to be consistency. It's how do we continue to scale, and that's what gives that data the value, because once the data starts to lose quality, then immediately it becomes questionable and you can't trust it, and and then that would be disappointing. So I'm sure that the really exciting answer would be robotics and stuff like that, but in what I believe, it will be consistency, continue to be consistent with the work that we're doing on the projects. That will then help drive capability in the supply chain, will help grow the market, all that good stuff. But for me, it's about the data.
Right. Now, great to hear that. So you're saying that your current state, so the BIM GIS is kind of established platform now, it's sort of working, and sort of into the system now, people know how to use that on site. You mentioned site surveys, during construction, project monitoring, and
But you know what? Sorry, I was going to say you said the word system, and I think the important bit is we could change the underlying technology, and I'm not suggesting that we're going to do that, but I believe we could change the underlying technology, and it would be a bit painful. But I think we could pick up another technology, and it wouldn't impact because we're still working the same way, still getting the same results, and all the rest of it. And I think that's pretty powerful. You're now starting to look at data. It doesn't matter what tool it is. It's what you're doing with the data that comes out of it.
100%.
Sorry,
100%. No. Great to hear that you can plug any new technology, but it's not about technology.
Yeah.
And I love the way you approach this. It's about early wins, establishing the platforms and platform approach, establish that. But once that's established, and using the common language you mentioned, once that's established, the platform is a secondary, area, but more importantly, focus on data. So that's where your focus is now.
Yeah.
You were saying, so next 3 to 5 years is about data. How can we drive that quality and consistency in data?
Yes.
And then make sense of the data.
Yeah.
Once you have that quality and consistency, how can you generate insights out of that data?
Yeah.
But I really loved the last bit, and I wonder if you could share a little bit about that, or that piece about being customer experience focused.
Yeah.
That's where you're heading towards, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that data and insight now, and then, but it's your ultimate goal is about the customer experience, right? That and how do you see then this evolving? You also mentioned evolving requirements. You are evolving requirements and approach and everything. So how do you see this evolving into that customer experience focused approach then?
Okay, so our drive to date has been around creating a digital twin. So we've got the smart destination team that they're creating the end-to-end platform for that. That they'll also be driving the digital twin piece. We've created a proof of concept. We wanted to ensure that we could get what we wanted out of the data and connect it to sensors and all that great stuff to the point where we've got two POCs. So one is where we've connected our model to the sensors that are in one of our assets that are open, the Turtle Bay Hotel. That's what I'm staying in. I'll be back there in a couple of weeks. Should have been there this week, but we're starting to get some real live data from the assets. And I suppose similarly, we're also doing that from a construction perspective. So we've got a workforce and vehicle tracking or monitoring system on site at the moment, so that we can see where people are from a health and safety perspective, security perspective, and that, that's live data that's coming back into our GIS platform. So we're starting to test, how feasible it is to get live data in from that environment during construction. But to answer your question, that will then feed our smart destination strategy. So we'll be able to sort of understand how efficiently and effectively people are able to get to their next experience, or where the luggage is, or how transportation is working. I'm sure that we're looking at, are people, if certain things happen, do people have a better time? So how do we maximize that so they have a better experience? But the bit that's what drives me in the project delivery side is, can we start to pull some of that information back as feedback to, inform future designs? Because it's, there's not many organizations that get a chance to do that, find out what's working, what's not working, what's making the customers happy, and then use that to think, well, when we design the next one, we can tailor it then for this. Is based on real life, experience.
Yeah, amazing, thank you. So let's go back to our earlier conversation where we touched upon briefly about, how Red Sea is the world's most ambitious, the sustainable development project, right?
Yep.
And you're setting really, new benchmarks in terms of how, at such a large scale, the ultra luxury tourism still can be sustainable, right?
Yeah.
The most sustainable development, not just sustainable.
Yeah.
And what I just heard from you is in terms of customer experience, and how BIM then in turn digital twin then fit into the smart strategy you mentioned, right?
Yep.
Help me understand a little bit about how does BIM fit within the wider sort of environmental sustainability initiatives that Red Sea is leading globally?
Okay. So I'll talk from the wider digital delivery perspective. So, and I mentioned some of this before, I think that the first place that we had an impact was in the GIS space. So again, talking about how we're able to find out what's currently in that area, and then track the impact that we've had. Bear in mind, I think it's for 2030, I should check that, but anyway, we're aiming to have a net positive impact, 30% net positive impact on the site as well. So it's not about not impacting the place, it's actually improving it. So we have to have that data to understand what that looks like, and then measure it. So I think GIS has been the first opportunity to do that, and allowing people to actually see rapidly what's happening there out in the 28,000 square kilometers, and then also encouraging feedback from the people that are out there. So that's probably one of the first areas that we got to do that. I think now from a more BIM perspective, and as I said, we've got that starting to get the data in place. That's high quality and it's reliable. We're now, and I can't tell you exactly what it is, but we're now starting to have sensible conversations now, or they were always sensible. We're able to have more meaningful conversations now with the environmental team, because they can ask us questions. We can say, well, is this what you mean by carbon impact? And how are we really going to measure that? And is it these types of things, or is it those types of things? And do we exclude those, or what else do you need? We can go find those. And like, it's even going down to the level of we're now, from a BIM perspective, we're working with one of our projects. So we're tracking where components are in the world. So they're getting created in, I think it's in Europe or maybe UAE, and when they get shipped, they've got a barcode on them. So when our senior project director says, well, where is everything? We can very rapidly show, well, these components are on site, they're installed. These components are on site ready to be installed. It's all color coded. These points are on the way. These ones are still in containers. They're in the sea. So we're starting to track, where the materials have moved and where they're tracked from, where they've come from. So yeah, we're just starting to collect the data to go play in that space, really.
Fantastic. So material tracking is one area.
Yeah.
Have you seen any areas like, I know you touched upon that very briefly about offsite manufacturing, prefabrications, right? And you're working directly with your manufacturers around the world, wherever the components and modules are being produced. And one of the advantages you saw from design efficiency point of view, the feedback loop, But if I take the environmental angle to that, you know, the sustainability angle to that, are you and the teams are seeing any advantages in terms of waste reduction and waste management point of view?
Yeah, so absolutely. There's and you know, I don't have the numbers in my head, but yeah, absolutely. There's just it's inherent as part of the process that you're going to reduce the waste in the material use. So you're starting to remove, you know, offcuts and all that kind of stuff. Similarly, the other benefit with it is you're working in a controlled environment. So there's less opportunity to waste. You haven't got so many external factors such as the weather or you know, the wrong bit of equipment not being there in the right place. They're set up to deliver these things. So straight away you're removing some of the waste there. But I think one of the, as I understand it, from an environmental perspective, it's because we're working in that controlled environment and we're using, you know, less people, probably less power, less materials. We're not doing all that work in a massively sensitive environment. So I can't even conceive how you'd build, say, some of these overwater villas that's, you know, got coral beside it, how you would do that pouring wet concrete into there. I can't see how you would see that would be feasible. So I think more of the impact is we're able to work in a controlled environment, and then the works that we're doing in a more sensitive area is controlled, and we're immediately having less impact, and we'll have less men on site, we'll have less machinery on site. So to me, that's where the bigger impact will be.
Right, and it must be huge from labor point of view and health and safety point of view as well, right? I mean, you mentioned severe weather conditions, you know, site logistics challenging, no infrastructure, right?
Yep.
So from labor welfare point of view also, it must have been a huge sort of advantage as well, you know, doing that digital sort of construction, you know, in the environment, and then offsite manufacturing. From health and safety point of view, it must be huge.
Absolutely, and then so couple that with so 4D turned into a big thing this year, and Aftab, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. Whatever I should say, he turned up with some 4D skills, and people just latched onto it, and so he ended up. It almost turned into a full-time job, and I promise that we'll stop that soon. But because we've got more people coming, but we've got but all of our projects now are doing simulation, 4D simulation, and that could be used for communication purposes. Maybe it's to our exec to show our sequencing. We're often using it with our contractors, even at the sort of like tender stage. So look, this is what we're expecting, plan to work in this way, and then we've got some really small examples where we modeled how we're going to slide toilet pods into existing assets. So and to look at that from a, well, was it possible? Also, how do we do this safely? So from a health and safety perspective, there's lots of great examples where we're able to visually show people how we're going to plan it. And if you look at some, especially on a Marla, there's some really complex structures. So it's like it's hard to imagine how you're going to do that. And some of it's, you know, quite, you know, stuff we've been doing for years. So how are we going to manage the cranes, where they're going to be positioned, where we're going to be, how's logistics going to fit around that. So it's a bit, and I suppose sort of going back to one of the things that I initially said is, and I think that's where it's important to be able to understand what the environment is like. So if you look at most of my team, they understand construction, so they can have a conversation about, well, you know, that doesn't really work, how you're trying to sequence that, because you can't get your trucks in to get your materials in, and that's where we're starting to have some real value in construction, especially with some of the people that are there on the ground all day, every day. They're often some of the harder ones to convince that this is a good thing to do, but they're now seeing the value. Okay, we can make my job easier, we can make it a bit safer. I now know how I'm going to get that really complex bit done. It's yeah, really powerful.
That's amazing, you know, this story, and I'm sure Aftab, if he's listening, must be very proud. You mentioned, you know, 4D, you know, the time and BIM connections now, and that must help you in your initiative in terms of empowering and enabling young talent, right? Because traditionally construction, you know, that program is all in their heads, right? The construction managers, the project director on site will figure it out. Yes, we have Gantt charts and we have, you know, the programs, but then we figure it out on site, kind of mentality, culture, right?
No, but that's reality.
Reality, right? Versus now, you bringing that discussion, conversation that usually happens on site, you're bringing that forward and getting the young talent involved who is helping the senior experienced construction leaders understand how technology can help.
Yeah.
And same way, it's kind of a reverse mentoring process, I guess, that they are having those conversations, like you mentioned, oh, this doesn't work, by the way, this doesn't work, that they may not have that luxury before, how does that, put that in perspective, David?
Yeah, so you mentioned two things there that was interesting, so I have to write them down so I remember, but that's sort of what we've done. So with the way I typically create a team is that everyone's T-shaped. So pretty much everyone that works for me has got to be able to run a project or run part of a project. So just like day-to-day information management, you have to be able to talk to consultants and contractors and our team to get things done. But they've all got one speciality, and we've been lucky, but we've put real effort into finding proper superstars. So someone will take one of those activities and industrialize it. So it's not just about doing it once; it's finding a smart way to do it that's automated and repeatable. Yeah. And then as we're getting the new talent through, they're able to pick up. It's almost like a pre-baked methodology to go get something done. It's not as scalable as I want it to be. We've still got a lot more to do there, but it then makes these services available to everyone as they come through. So always on the lookout for someone's got a superpower in a certain aspect and has the right behaviour and culture to want to share that knowledge and not keep hold of it themselves, which, as you know, in BIM isn't always the case. But the one thing you mentioned then I thought was quite important was this is where you have to have people that understand what it's really like to deliver a project. So the reality is when you get to site, things are going to change because you turn up and it's not quite looking how you thought it was going to look, and you have to make a change there and then. And you can work with the contractors to go make it happen so you can keep pace and you keep on delivering, and then you have to find a way then to sort of re-engineer that. So this is where information management becomes important. It's finding out what's happened, recognise that change. There's a whole sort of process around it. But from us, from a data quality perspective, we have to go capture that and make sure that we caught it in our models. And that's probably an area where we've got good lessons learned in there now.
And how did you I'm really curious, how did you take project managers and construction team on the journey, David? Because, for them, seeing 4D or BIM first time is like, well, it's a completely different world, right?
Yeah.
From how traditionally they would have worked. I can understand in the office, with young talent, computer literacy, and so how did you take the construction managers on the journey in this space?
Yeah, so so again, it comes down to, I think we're really lucky. We've got super talented people working for us, and a lot of the people, especially early doors, have worked on big projects and worked with big organisations. So it wasn't a super huge challenge. I guess from my perspective, there's the Stodgel Glennon curve is what it was known as, but so I understand that you're not going to capture everyone. So there's some people that will not engage, will never want to engage, so leave them alone. And there's some that you can somehow get them engaged, but there's no point spending too much energy there because they want some of the outputs to help make a decision, but they're not interested. But the vast majority of people will move towards where the noise is, right? So we're lucky with that we've got some excellent SP, senior project directors, the construction managers, and once they see a way of making something possible, or it's going to save them some time or some cost or make it safer, that they'll absolutely want it. And because everyone's living together, the project next door wants to know what that is. And so if we can get something working well, very quickly, all the other projects want to do the same, because why wouldn't you? So it's not been it's not been too challenging. But if I was to turn up and say, look, I need you to put a load of effort in to do something for me that you're not going to get any value in, of course you're not going to get any traction there.
Yeah, so it's demonstrating value, and then the people can see value, and then taking fantastic. So if somebody has to start, I know it's not going to be a second Red Sea, in the world, but somebody needs to start a project of this size and scale and ambitions. Any final thoughts, David, from your journey so far and looking into the future for our listeners?
Okay, so I'll probably do that in two bits. So if if you're new to the industry and or new to the digital space, I'd say it's well worth investing your time to understand how a project works, because digital BIM by itself, and you don't really understand what's going on in a project, isn't it'll be okay, but it's not going to be super valuable. So I'd spend some time understanding how project works and what a contract is and how to understand the scope and understand your budget and change management and all the rest of it. And then for those that probably have you know, a bit more experience, is look, well, because to go back to one, I suppose I've done the same. I've spent a lot of time working on strategy over the last decade or so, whereas I found it really exciting to go get stuck in again and to get really you know, close to the delivery side. So I suppose it's sort of understanding that if you're going to work on a project that's not been done before, that's fast track construction management, you know, lots of challenges everywhere, you're going to have to get your hands on and go walk the walk and actually go and do it. But you know what, there's lots and lots and lots of super talented people and organizations that thrive in that challenging environment, that they don't necessarily want the easy projects to work on. They really enjoy the really tricky ones. So it's probably closely working with those that are in the supply chain. That's probably where the success is. Yeah.
So understand the project, understand the supply chain, contractual mechanism. I mean, you throw a lot in there about a strategy, and you know, and make sure that it's not about the shiny piece of kit and BIM, and you know, it's not technology. It's about the culture, behaviors, you know, taking people on the journey. Thank you, David. This has been absolutely brilliant conversation. Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us today on this BSI BIM Talks. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thank you everyone.